Okay.
Hi, my name is Rachel Green.
Oh, am I introducing myself or are you?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I'm Jacqueline Applegate.
And then Wendy.
And I am Wendy Tyler.
And Michelle Gordon.
Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and get started here and just talk about what we noticed from the video that we watched. So let's start with Michelle. Do you want to go ahead and start with some things that you noticed? You don't have to do everything, but maybe just a few things.
Sure. Well, the family came in, and I noticed that Jimmy was this big problem in their family, and the whole family kind of pointed towards him, and we're here because of Jimmy. And he was, he was the one that changed in their family dynamics. That's what changed. And I think I noticed that the mom was having a hard time letting those purse strings go a little bit and letting him be an independent adult. And I think this caused Jimmy to fight back a little bit and be more rebellious. And then he has a dad who, was like, well, I love my wife and I want to support her, but I think she's a little crazy. And
Yeah.
So I'm going to kind of try to side with Jimmy, which causes tension. I mean, I had that almost same scenario in my family. And it's like, that caused tension between the husband and wife because they weren't quite seeing eye to eye on how to deal with Jimmy's new behaviors. And then the sister was, I think, just mad, jealous, upset that, he's growing up, he's leaving, he's doing all these things that he isn't supposed to be doing, and he's not spending any time with me. I lost a friend. And so those are the kind of things that stood out to me right at the beginning of the session.
Thank you. Jacqueline, do you have any things you want to add?
One thing that really stood out to me was the dynamic of the family move and how that impacted everybody. I know that they moved for their dad's work, and it probably was a great opportunity, but I think that probably led to or heightened the change that's a big change in independence and moving forward, but I think it was a big change. And sometimes I kind of got the idea too that it was like I don't know if I'm phrasing this right, but a scapegoat to focus instead of focusing on just the move and the things that it created for everyone. It became about Jimmy and his independence or desire for independence. And that was something that stood out to me.
Yeah, I agree that the move was kind of a big deal. And not only the move, but the amount of time that dad was working and away from home. I think Jimmy mentioned that, like, he's never here anyway. So why does he care? He's not even here. Why can't I be gone? He's gone.
Right.
Do you want to add something? Go ahead and add something, Wendy.
I saw that the therapist, the first thing he did was to clarify what each person's position was. Dad, why do you think we're here? He wanted to know specifically from each person, their point of view, why dad thought they were there, why mom thought they were there, sister, brother. So he he really clarified to make sure he understand everyone's viewpoint.
Yeah, I liked that they did that. Kind of is that kind of under defining how the family sees the stressor in a way?
Oh, absolutely.
Perception, yeah. Each person had a different perception.
So since you kind of transitioned to the professional, let's talk a little bit about some things that you noticed that they did besides from that point. So clarifying, why they're there. What are some of the other things you noticed that they were doing?
I think they identified the feelings.
Identified feelings, yeah, I agree.
They, it's like we identified the behavior, and then he identified, how does that make you feel? how are you feeling with that action?
The behavior of each family member, really. Like, what are you doing? What are you, yeah. And then identifying feelings and making sure that the feelings were well identified, I guess.
Right. And that each person was able to identify how they were feeling in that situation.
Mm-hmm. Jacqueline, did you have anything you want to add?
One thing that I noticed too was that he was very positive during the entire thing, and he found common ground right away with them. He was able to share the experiences of his family and his feelings as his children grew up and kind of went through similar situations. So I think that helped make the family a lot more comfortable, to be able to open up a little bit more. And he was great. He had a lot of jokes, and I thought that was great.
Yeah.
I thought that was funny. Typical corny dad jokes that teenagers hate.
Right.
Yeah, I thought he was a little corny too.
Yeah, this guy's such a loser, yeah. But I think it helped kind of break the ice and make the family feel more comfortable.
Totally.
Right.
And he can laugh at himself.
Right. He was very approachable. You know, he didn't come in there like, oh, I'm going to show you guys how to do this.
Yeah.
Right.
Here's what you're doing wrong. He was corny and goofy. And yet he brought out the emotions and kind of got to the problem in a roundabout way without, okay, what's your problem? You know?
And he quite often said, this is your family. I don't know your family.
Mm-hmm.
So he, kind of what you were saying, he didn't just go in and say, this is what you guys need to do to fix this. He was saying, this is your family. You know, how can you guys fix this? How can I help you guys to fix this? Rather than just telling them what to do.
Right. I like that too. He kind of gave the tools back to them. Like, you guys come up with a plan to, you know, as husband and wife, what you need to do. Talk about it. Don't run away, you know, and shut down. Talk about what the problem is and what you need to do. So he kind of gave it back to them, like gave them the power, I guess.
Yeah.
To fix their own family.
But that was much easier after he was able to identify how Jimmy was feeling, because I don't think the family realized that Jimmy was feeling, you know, hurt and disappointed by all the things that happened. And they just thought he was being rebellious. So I think once the family could understand Jimmy's feelings, that helped heal a lot.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And if anybody has teenagers, I guess you do, Michelle, but teenagers, they, especially teenage boys, shut down a lot like that. Like, don't share feelings, or they just walk away and go hang out with their friends.
Yep.
Right. And they're just being rude and disrespectful. And
right.
I have one of those.
For no reason. Yeah, I do too.
Right.
Yeah. And they're just like, dude, I'm just asking you a question.
Right. You live here, you can help do the dishes once in a while, or take out the garbage.
Yeah.
Oh man, you guys are making me excited for that. I just have a 1-year-old. So.
Well, it's too late.
Yep, the only way through it is through, right? But I did think that definitely being able to identify Jimmy's feelings especially helped break down barriers, and then it helped the rest of the family members open up a lot. I think especially with his sister, and when he was able to help her identify that she was just missing him, I think that helped him to understand as well that the reasons why she felt the need to tell her parents everything or to yell at him and act out.
Yeah, he realized he was loved. I thought that was a big opening for the whole family, is that, you know, they do love him. They're just worried about him.
Right.
And he wasn't making choices that helped them feel any better. You know, staying out till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and not telling your family where you're at. I mean.
But he did have a line that he didn't cross. He wasn't partying, or, you know, I mean, so he says he wasn't.
So he says, yeah.
Partying and doing all that. So I think he was maybe that staying out late and breaking that curfew felt like a safe rule to break that would draw attention and say, hey, don't forget about me. You know, I'm here.
Good point.
Right. His way of being rebellious a little bit without being too rebellious.
Right, not rooting his whole life.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then maybe even with the move, you know, leaving his friends at home, he has to make new friends here, and then try to fit in. And, it'd been a couple years, but that's still not easy at that age to have to move.
Absolutely.
And you can, and your friends at that age are a huge influence on you.
Right.
If you're not in a good group of friends, you easily go with the crowd and the bad group of friends.
Right. Whoever will accept you, really.
Right.
I think that was definitely important. I also think the fact that he was kind of in this limbo where he didn't have concrete future plans of college or career choices. And I think that definitely contributed a lot and was probably a big reason in kind of his need for attention and calling attention and maybe help in that area as well.
Yeah. Why hadn't the parents discussed what his future plans were going to be? Usually you come up with a game plan. Okay, you graduate in high school.
Yeah.
2 years.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting.
Where are you going? What's the plan? And you work on that plan. You don't wait till they graduate and say, okay, so now what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Right. And then the dad was just kind of like, oh, he's finding himself. And I'm like, no, you can't just do nothing. You should be doing something, whether it's working, going to school. I mean, something.
Does he have a job? If you're 18 and you're not in school, you better have a job.
They did mention that they had talked about it in the past, but maybe with the move and the dad not being home, it just kind of went by the wayside and wasn't discussed anymore.
Yeah, I would be really mad as a parent if my kid, was doing that. And, you don't have a job. You don't have a life plan. You don't have a job. You're not going to school. That's not acceptable. You need to be doing something. Right. You can't just freeload. And I can understand why the mom was really mad at this kid.
Right. No, I took the mom's side completely. That was me. I'm the crazy mom. Why aren't you doing anything with your life? Come up with something.
Yeah, do something. Let's see. What is going here? Oh, the one thing that was interesting that I was thinking about was how the professional turned the conversation away from Jimmy for a while to the parents and kind of talked about them dating and, needing to spend time together too and strengthening that relationship. We've seen that, quite a bit in our studying about how that relationship is so important, the relationship between the husband and wife and strengthening that bond, and that kind of helps the rest of the family. Do you guys have anything you want to say about that?
Yes. Well, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, so he specifically said, he kind of talked about, okay, what are our goals? What can you guys do, to help you believe that the son is really doing what he says he's doing? What can you guys do to not argue and fight? What can you do to talk and make a plan? So we talked about, what their goals would be, and then they went on to make a specific plan, and he gave them each an assignment that they all
talk
had
about
to do
those
that week.
So what were the assignments that they got?
Well, go ahead.
The parents had to go on a date, and he made them set up a date. Dad and Jimmy needed to come together and work on something together, help build his confidence. And the siblings needed to go out on some time alone together. He needed to take his sister out. He needed to ask her. So I liked how he made those concrete action plan for them. And this is what you need to do this week. Don't just, it was simple. They were simple, easy steps that need to get started. It wasn't this big, huge, okay, we need to do this, revamp this whole family. It was, let's do these simple steps and see how we go from there.
He also did ask the parents to sit down and talk with the kids. Remember, he talked about for like 30 minutes on Sunday.
Talking to each one of the kids, and then talking about together what to do with about Jimmy. The parents needed to figure that part out.
Yeah, and I think that goes hand in hand with the family councils that we've been studying as well. even if it wasn't like a formal council, it was still a type of council that was
Right.
important for them to be able to check in with each other and to continue to make progress.
Yes, and positive interactions as well.
Well, and just the fact that they came to the conclusion that they all loved each other. So
Right.
that, you know, that feeling of belonging and love and need was there for each one of them. And I think that was really good. And they kind of worked together on, let's solve this problem. Let's collaborate together in solving this problem.
Yeah.
It kind of did the same thing at the end that he did at the beginning. He asked them, you know, each of their feelings about what they had learned. You know, he went through each one of them. What specifically, you know, did you learn? And
what's your takeaway from this experience?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I liked how he did. I mean, his goofy manner kind of brought them all together. And he, you know, at the beginning I thought, how is he ever going to, you know, he's just asking these silly questions, you know.
Right.
But he really put him at ease, and he made it comfortable. And he did get, you know, he had this 50 minutes of, you know, clearly he's a professional, but he had this 50 minutes of time where he needed to get, you know, let's list all the barriers in this family. Let's list some action plans. Let's list what we can do and the feelings. And he brought it all together at the end with concrete tasks to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found that impressive how he was able to completely utilize that 50 minutes, because that just seems like such a short amount of time. And it was amazing that they really could open up in that amount of time. So it just highlighted the importance of making sure that you are relating to the family and that you're approachable. And I think that he did a great job of that.
Right.
Yeah. Agree. Let's see. Okay, what about looking for the family strengths? That's something I had written down, trying to look for where they were strong. Did anybody notice something about that?
Well, they previously spent a lot of time together, so they had a great family bond. They had activities that they used to do together. So I think that's a strength, because they could draw on that, and they had those memories. It wasn't like this whole lifetime of trouble. Their son is, you know, they've had 6 months to a year of trouble, you know, not 18 years of trouble. So they had good memories to look back on and fond things to remember, and good family times. Those are, you know, when you have those memories, that's what the kids remember.
Right.
One strength that I noticed was their desire and their willingness to even come to therapy. I thought that showed a strength of obviously wanting to improve for the entire family, and that they were able to utilize that 50 minutes, and it looked like they had all opened up to some degree. So I think that is a strength of that they were willing to come in the first place, and it showed that they did have a good sense of unity in their family. Even if they were struggling, they were aware of it and were willing to make the necessary changes to fix it.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, willing to open up in that short amount of time is huge. I've been with my son before on multiple occasions, and he's like, nope, not doing it. So.
Yeah, so at least Jimmy had some willingness to want to do that, because he could have gone there with really a big chip on his shoulder and not said anything.
Yeah, he kind of did have a bit of an attitude, but he was at least willing to share.
And he softened a little bit at the part of the end when he realized that we just really care about you. That's why we're getting mad.
Right.
Definitely. I think he could have easily been so defensive, because they came in and they kind of all centered it around him. So I did think it was pretty great that he was willing to open up.
Right. And that he went.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Let's see.
I also noticed that he physically had them sit in different spots and move as the conversation was between specific people.
Right. I think it was important to put the mom and dad together. I noticed that when they came in, that they kind of had the daughter in between them, and maybe that was just how it, naturally worked out. But to put mom and dad together as that strong unified couple and kind of strengthen that bond there and kind of show that example, I think was really good.
Right.
And they first it started a little bit like, but then they softened towards each other too. Like, held hands and Dad put his arm around her and those kinds of things.
Right. Well, Dad's probably thinking, why are we here?
Yeah, this is dumb.
We don't need, you're the crazy one.
And that part kind of made me really annoyed because it's like instead of, shutting down and maybe you think she's doing, being a little too much, well, help find a common ground or something like reassurance, or not be like, oh, I'm going to side with the kid. You got to stand as a united front.
Yeah, she was over the top because she wasn't getting support from him.
Right.
Had he stepped in and said, hey, this is our family rules and we're going to, she would have totally backed off. I think.
Yeah.
So,
if she felt like she was being heard.
Right. And supported.
Then she would have. Yeah. And she wasn't being, so she was going crazy.
Right. In there.
Yeah. Can't you do something? Can't do this by myself. So yeah, for sure. I mean, I can understand her frustration where she's coming from on that, because Dad's siding with the kid and they're both just kind of like, whatever, we don't care what you say. That's a huge problem.
Right. I totally agree.
So what about go ahead.
No, I was just going to say he was really great about helping them understand why each person was doing what they were doing, because everybody thought they were doing it for different reasons, when really it was all just coming from a place of love and wanting to be understood. And he helped them to understand that and to see that.
Right. Identify their feelings, identify why they're acting the way they're acting. Yeah. That's really good. Jacqueline, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I think that you guys covered it. I think that it was a great session that I really did like the fact that he did put them together, because I think that that's something that we've studied over and over again, is the family and the marriage is so important to a family's success.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think bringing this, then he put the son with the parents towards the end. Mm-hmm. And I think that helped the son to be like, oh yeah, I'm part of this family. My parents do love me. Mm-hmm. Physically putting him in that position, where it was before he was sitting off in the corner, just kind of looking down the whole time, Yeah,
you could tell by the end of it that all of their body language had definitely softened. I feel like they were all a little bit defensive. And by the end, that, like somebody said earlier, the dad's arm was around the mom, and they just had definitely brought down a lot of barriers.
Yeah, I agree. He's almost banished in that chair by himself. It just kind of naturally worked out that way, but yeah, it's interesting.
But he came, I guess he came in the room first, and he wanted
walked all the way across. I mean, he couldn't sit in the middle of the couch. And,
he knew he was on the hot seat, and he knew that he didn't want to sit by his family probably at that point.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, what was the conversation on the way to therapy?
Oh,
why are we do this?
Why you make me do this? This is so stupid.
I'm 18. I can do what I want. I'm a man, even though I don't support myself financially.
We're skateboarding all day long.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Any place else? Anything else anybody wants to cover?
I'm
not sure how we're gonna get 45 minutes out of this. I feel like we're kind of good.
Oh, how about the different ways he talked about how the mom and the daughter, if there's a problem, they talk about it, they say something, whereas the dad and the son would shut down. So he kind of just let them know this is pretty typical. This is how women's brains work, so that they didn't feel bad that that's the way that we're acting, and helping them to understand why they just kind of naturally initially reacted that way.
Right. Yeah, that was definitely interesting. And then how it's kind of modeled too, and you kind of take on the same gender model. So the boy would kind of do the same things as dad does. The daughter kind of does the same thing as the mom.
Right.
As more natural.
Right. It seemed like the mom and daughter were a team, you know,
Right.
in the disciplining of Jimmy.
Instead of the dad and the mom.
Right.
For sure.
Right.
The daughter's kind of like trying to back up mom because dad isn't doing it.
Right. So, you know, the sister stepped in and was playing mom role.
Right. And that's what he said. He said, I feel like I have a second mom. She's not my mom. Yeah. She's kind of, you know, building resentment towards her when really she just wants her brother back. And that was interesting. I also liked how the professional kind of played the dumb card. Like, okay, so I might be wrong about this. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is kind of what I'm seeing here. Is that? And I've had that experience, and I'm like, what? Are they not listening to me? Like, what? You know, trying to help them put into a simple phrase what their thoughts might be, and they can just kind of say yeah or no.
Right.
That's interesting.
He did at one point ask the dad about his background.
That's true. I remember that.
Why the dad was struggling because he didn't know how to deal with it because he hadn't learned.
Right. Hadn't had an example, yeah. And then the grandparent or the dad's parents didn't even spend a whole lot of time with their families, so that was interesting.
Right.
I thought that was important that they were able to do that in the group setting as well, because then his family is aware of that, and so it's something that they can help him to work on. Because I feel like sometimes you discover these things in an individual setting, and it never comes to light in your family. So I feel like because the family is now aware of it, they're better able to help him with that, or at least better able to understand where he's coming from.
Right.
That's excellent.
Yeah, very good point.
And that kind of helps make a lot of sense of why he's just shutting down and why he doesn't think it's a big deal, because he did it the same thing.
Yeah.
But he probably had a job, so.
He was working for the railroad at 18.
That's right.
And that's kind of that's a little bit generational too, that my dad wasn't a super involved dad, so
that's true.
No, that was really a thing. You mean dads?
And even a cultural thing. There's a lot of cultures where it's like the mom is the disciplinarian and the dad just kind of does whatever he wants. So
comes home, reads the paper, watches TV, eats some ice cream.
Right. I think it's both generational and cultural, because
right.
There was the time where dad just came home from work and checked out, and mom's still dealing with the kids all day long, and then a lot of cultural that way.
And back to the resiliency, I do think I think it was great that they were able to identify the positives they saw in Jimmy and in the sisters. They were all able to voice some of those positive things and bring that back, because that's, if we're just focusing on all the negative all the time, forget about those positives. So I think they, there wasn't a ton, but they brought up some of the positive things. Jimmy and I used to be really good friends. He's a great brother. I don't know what happened.
Right.
So, that was part of the resiliencies. They could look and see the positive in this negative situation.
Right.
And I, Jacqueline brought this up, but just even the fact that they came to counseling and pretty early on, it's like, it wasn't even, I don't think I would have gone to counseling for that little bit of issue with my 18-year-old,
I thought of that same thing as well. I'm like, this is just an everyday problem. Why are they here?
Especially because counseling is money. Like, that's like money that they're spending. So they were definitely invested in their family.
Oh, good point.
That's a good. But just the fact that they came to counseling for that little problem, that seems like a little problem. They were trying to nip this problem in the bud, because it could have had lifelong consequences.
Totally.
Right. And I think that's the thing. Once the kid, once you're at a certain age as a young adult, that's the choices that you're making right there are life changing. I mean, he could be into drugs. They didn't know, drugs and alcohol, and considering he doesn't have a job and isn't going to school, that's a very likely result. Yeah. So they were worried, and he's not talking to them, and anything that, they're just not communicating, really. Mom's freaking out, son's walking away, and they're just not communicating. And I think because it just kept going in a circle, mom is like, you know what, that's it. We need help because this isn't working.
Right. And luckily they had probably good insurance that covered that cost.
Right.
Well, they should with all the time the dad is working. So.
Right. I mean, I think the railroad provides a good benefit.
good insurance policy. Cover that $200 visit.
Right.
Nice. Let's see. I can't read my handwriting. Rebuilding relationships. Does anybody have anything else, or should we go ahead and just wrap up and go over our notes? We're a little short, but I think we're pretty close, unless somebody has something.
Everything I had down. I mean, I have like 3 pages of notes, and I think we touched on everything.
Yeah, we really did. But maybe if we had another person, it would take longer. So then we're good. We're good. We're okay to go a little short.
I'll bring up one thing that maybe we touched on this, but Jimmy just felt like, why bother? Why should I even try? Nobody cares about me.
Right.
And so when he had that mind switch, that paradigm switch of, oh, they do love me, maybe he's back in school and working right now, because he had that self-esteem. So his self-esteem was suffering a little bit. He's, all of a sudden he's in a place that clearly they didn't prepare him for. And all of a sudden he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know where to go or what to do with his future.
Right. Or it's the choices that he's made,
Yeah.
My son's 18. He graduated from high school. We've talked about, what are you going to do? Where do you want to go? His whole life. He started going to college. He dropped within a few, maybe 6 to 8 weeks. He has a job, but it's part-time, and it's, and he just kind of went off the deep end with word of wisdom stuff and all kinds of stuff just within 6 months to a year. So, I mean, it hasn't even been a year yet. And it started before he graduated high school, and then he just started, he's taking AP classes, and then he just started tanking everything. So they changed his schedule so that he could just take what he needed to graduate. And I mean, it's been devastating, just a super rocky road. And a lot of times, people look at a family with a wayward child, what happened there? What's wrong with those parents or that kid or whatever? And it's we did everything we could for this kid his whole life. And he's just, trying to teach him to work hard and, get good grades. And then just 6 months before he turned 18, tanked it. Everything. So he barely graduated. It was crazy.
Well, I've got a son that's a senior right now that's kind of in that same boat. So,
yeah.
Are you going to graduate? That's my question.
Right. You better graduate.
I paid for that cap and gown. Are you going to graduate?
Yeah.
That's exactly what I told my son. I already paid for it. You're going to finish and you're going to walk.
My son said, my son didn't walk. He didn't want to walk, so I'm like, all right. I bought a yearbook for him, but I said, I'm not giving it to you. I'm keeping it because you'll just trash it. Yeah. So, but I have one for you. If you ever turn your life around, I've got your senior yearbook for you.
No, they do usually turn around.
He will. Eventually, he will. He'll care and he'll want.
Yeah.
I know. I have a daughter who was really was at the state president's office, ready to push the mission button. Got help. She had tested positive for tuberculosis and had to do the treatment, and that was a 6-month-long treatment.
Yikes!
She walked out of that stake president interview and has never been back to church since.
Oh,
Oh heavens.
So,
sorry.
but she's a great person, you know. I mean, she's you know, in nursing school and doing all these great things, but she just walked away from the church that day and has never come back.
Wow, that's crazy. I'm sorry for you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, it's
like,
weird.
We did family home evening. We did, you know,
Yeah.
I did everything that you're supposed to do, and they get to make. They're adults. They get to make decisions that you get to live with the choices. And I you know, I felt I did everything that I could do. So.
Right. Yeah, my son was going to seminary up until, you know, 3 days, and then he he stopped, or he wasn't going to class, but he was there, and 3 days later he ran away for 3 weeks, and I was just like, I don't, like, how does that happen? It's just crazy, but it happens like that sometimes.
It does.
Sorry, we're not trying to freak you out, Jacqueline, because we have good kids too.
Yeah, I have a couple good success stories. And my daughter is a success story because she, you know, she's super motivated and works hard, and it's just, I love her to death. She is helpful and kind and sweet, just not active in the church.
See, and I think I would be like, it is kind of hurtful if they're not active in the church, but if my son was like at least a nice person, I'd be okay with that, you know? It's like,
right. Well, it took me a good probably 6 to 9 months to not be so angry that what she did.
Yeah.
And to come back and think my relationship with her is more important than what she's doing. And that really is what, I mean, I was angry. Man, I was that crazy mom.
Yeah.
You know, because I had my son, I had her, I had these things going on, and I'm like, our whole life is falling apart. And I was that crazy mom.
Yeah.
And my husband was the one like, yeah, it's fine. What's the big deal?
Let's just let it go, you know. It's not like they can't come back. They can. It's just that, you know, once they start going down a certain path, it's a long road back.
And that's
what you're trying to avoid.
They may be, you know, there's lots of people leaving the church that choose not to come back. So, and I have to be okay with that decision.
Yeah. You just have to love her anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and she's out in the other room playing with my 10-year-old. Right?
That's awesome.
You know? So I just love her to death. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Well, you have a great perspective on that.
Yeah, well, it took me a long time to get it. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say I'm sure it took a long time to get to that point. Yeah.
For sure. 6 to 8, it took a while.
Yeah.
Agency is a hard thing sometimes.
Yeah, that's right.
It is.
It kind of gives you that perspective.
I do have a son on a mission, so that's good.
That is awesome. Where is your child on a mission?
He's in Louisiana.
Oh,
nice.
So, and he'll be home in July. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to see the different spectrums of where, you know, your kids go. It's like they could go anywhere. Yeah.
Yep. Because my 18-year-old son that's a senior, he doesn't go to church. He wants nothing to do. He doesn't have any.
Not interested. Yeah.
No interest whatsoever.
Yeah. That is, yeah. My husband's older brother struggled with addictions pretty much his whole, from when he was in high school till after. And he went back and forth with the church, and he ended up getting married and was really active in the church. And then he just fell back into his addiction, and actually it took his life. And it's interesting to see how these different things, and now looking at my husband's family dynamic, but it really had, that whole trial has made all of them, I mean, it's definitely left a big impact on them. But I think for my husband, at least, it was this motivation that he didn't want to be like that. And so he just became this like golden child, I guess you would call it, and wanted to be the one that did everything right. And so it is interesting to see all the different dynamics that happen in families.
And that's a difficult position too, because I have a 16-year-old daughter, and she's like, I don't want to be like him. I don't want to be like, you know, her older brother. I said, but if you don't want to, you won't. But she tries to, you know, be the perfect child. I'm like, you're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. So don't, you know, you just keep trying. So
totally. It's a hard situation. We just got back from a dental mission trip to Guatemala. So it's interesting because it kind of puts everything into perspective for you. And it's just eye-opening and crazy to see these different things.
Yeah, that's good.
It sounds like a really cool experience.
Yeah, it was really fun. We had initially planned to go in the fall, but with all the hurricanes, they just shut down a bunch of airports. So we finally got it scheduled. So we were excited.
That's cool. Very cool. So Wendy, you want to go ahead and go over the notes? We're going to review our notes and kind of add or change anything.
Okay, so some things under points identified. Jimmy was a main problem. The reason the family was there because they felt that he was changing and rebelling. Dad thought mom was overreacting, which was causing tension between the two of them. Sister was upset that he changed, not at home, possibly jealous, angry that he was causing the family to argue. The family move could have contributed to the problem, and Dad wasn't home as much. The family didn't realize how Jimmy was feeling. Once they did, the family was able to open up, particularly the sister. We could identify with Jimmy's behavior because most of us have teenage boys. Jimmy's bad behavior could have been his way of getting attention, needing help planning his future, self-esteem problems. And then as far as observations, we kind of came to the conclusion that the family came to the conclusion that they all loved each other and hadn't been understanding how each other was feeling and why they were doing what they were doing. The son did not get defensive, which surprised all of us because I would have expected him to, just if I had been in that situation, I would have felt defensive.
Right, me too.
But he was willing to participate. The body language softened by the end. Parents were holding hands. Son was interacting better, where earlier he had been in the corner looking down. The family was able to identify the positive sides of each family member. We were surprised because we didn't think the family had a big enough problem to see a counselor, but the family saw it as important enough to spend the money to get help to solve their problems. And under the professional use of resiliency factors, he clarified the perception of each person, how they were perceiving it. He wanted to know why each person thought they were there. He wanted to know each of their feelings, what their own behaviors were. He was positive. He found common ground right away with the family so as to connect with them and help the family to feel comfortable. He gave the tools to fixing things back to the family rather than just telling them what to do. He gave assignments, had parents set up a date, siblings doing something together, and specifically told them not to talk about Jimmy's problem. He had the family sit down together. He looked for their strengths, talked about how they used to camp together, their desire and willingness to come to therapy, and that they were aware that they needed to open up and make changes. He had them change positions physically, put mom and dad together first, and then brought the son closer to them towards the end. He helped them to understand that it's pretty normal for mom and daughter to talk about problems, whereas dad and son would shut down, kind of explained why. He asked dad about his background, how his family had been disengaged, and so he didn't know how to communicate and help his own family. And so that helped the family understand where he was coming from and pointed out generational and cultural differences. That's everything I got.
That's great.
That was great. Yeah, that was very thorough.
That sounds good. Yeah. Good job. Nice job. That's a hard task to organize all that.
That's why I didn't talk much.
That's great.
Typing.
I'm frantically typing. Okay, that sounds great. I can go ahead and submit those if you guys want.
Okay, I'm going to stop the broadcast and we can talk about it.